We are now just 1 week away, just 1 week, till Formula 1 2020 hits our TV screens, Melbourne, Australia, round 1 of the 2020 season. But before we get there, and as I like to do before every season of Formula 1 since I've been on YouTube, I like to do a few videos for the more casual audiences, for you that are out there at home and perhaps you occasionally watch Formula 1, perhaps this year you watched Drive to Survive and love that over on Netflix and have decided, you know what, I'm going to give the actual thing a go this year, and awesome. All I will say, if you give it a try, that's all I can ask. So, in today's video, the teams and drivers, we're going to go through all 10 teams, all 20 drivers, give you a bit of a background. Maybe you want to know who's actually driving, who's actually in the sport, or maybe you're actually looking for someone to root for, to get behind, to support for the 2020 season, or maybe you're just being nosy and fancy watching along. So if you're old, you're OGs for Formula 1, you're middle ground or complete noobs, don't worry, I'm hoping to cover you today. Shall we crack on with it? Enough messing. I want to try and make this as punchy as possible. So, we'll start off with the reigning champions, Mercedes. Their drivers, Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas, they've now had the same pair of drivers since 2017. The team has been back in Formula 1 since 2010, and over the last 3 seasons have been champion every single year. And as you'll see over the course of today's video, I'm only going to focus on the last 3 Constructors' Championship, so the Team's Championship. But what I will tell you is Mercedes have won every single season since 2014. They've had a huge period of dominance, 6 in a row, aiming for 7 this season. 102 victories, 111 pole positions, 211 podiums, and yes, they have won every single Constructors and Drivers' World Championship since 2014. Lewis Hamilton claiming every single one of those championships except 2016, where his teammate Nico Rosberg took the title away from him. We might as well start with Lewis Hamilton, our first of our drivers. I mean, the most obvious place to start. He is aiming for a 7th world title, a record equaling world title, along with Michael Schumacher. 250 Grand Prix, driver number 44, and he's only driven for 2 teams throughout his Formula 1 career. McLaren from 2007 to 2012, and he then swapped over to Mercedes in 2013 through to 2020. 6 world titles in total, 5 of them at Mercedes, 1 at McLaren in only his 2nd year in Formula 1 in 2008. His career breakdown a little bit more in detail here. 250 races, 151 podiums. Ridiculous. 88 pole positions, the most of any driver ever in Formula 1. 84 victories, those 6 world titles that we mentioned, and last season finished on top, 1st place. 5 pole positions, a little bit less than we're used to for Hamilton, but 11 victories. Still proving he is the number 1 in Formula 1. His teammate really stepped it up last year, Valtteri Bottas, the Finnish driver with 140 race starts, finished 2nd in the 2019 season. He also has only raced for 2 teams, Mercedes over the past 3 years, but before that started his career and drove for 4 seasons with Williams. But Valtteri's career, not as long as Lewis's, almost 100 Grand Prix less, well over 100 Grand Prix less than Lewis Hamilton, only 140 for Valtteri, but his record isn't too shabby. 45 podiums in that time, 11 pole positions, 7 race victories, 4 of those coming from last season, and 5 of his 11 pole positions coming from last season. So he really stepped up the bar, was 2nd to Lewis Hamilton, but still didn't quite have that consistency over an entire season to beat the British driver. That's going to be a key story in those early stages of 2020. Can he match his teammate? I'm not too sure, but it would be really great and really spicy for the start of the season if he was able to do so. Moving on to our 2nd team, Ferrari, the most iconic Formula 1 team of all time. They've been there pretty much since day 1. The only Grand Prix they missed was the 1st ever race in Silverstone. However, this year, Sebastian Vettel, the 4-time world champion, and their young hero, Charles Leclerc, their two drivers. The past 3 seasons, second place, just haven't been able to quite get over the line and beat Mercedes, but their record speaks for itself. 237 victories, 228 pole positions, but here's the stinger, 765 podiums. Bear in mind, last season we celebrated our 1000th Grand Prix in Formula 1. That's not a bad statistic whatsoever. We'll start with Sebastian Vettel, the 4-time world champion. 32 years old, he's one of the older drivers on the grid. Driver number 5, he's competed in 241 Grand Prix, and he's driven for a bit of a variety of teams in Formula 1. Made his debut all the way back in 2006 with BMW Sauber, and 2007 did a couple of races as well, but then transitioned to Toro Rosso in that 2007 season, and at the end of 2008, after securing his first ever pole position and victory, was promoted to the big team Red Bull Racing in 2009, where he was runner-up in the championship and then went on to win 4 consecutive Drivers' World titles before struggling against teammate Daniel Ricciardo in 2014, subsequently moving to Ferrari at the end of the season. Seb's career breakdown a little bit like this. Those 241 races, well, he's got a podium rate of almost 50%, 120 podiums, 57 pole positions, 53 race victories, those 4 world titles. But last year was a bit of a difficult season for Sebastian. Only 1 victory, which came in Singapore, and even that one was slightly controversial. 2 pole positions last year and finished 5th overall in the standings. I expect him to do a little better this year and to definitely be hungry for victories early on. And also hungry to prove himself against this man, Charles Leclerc, only 22 years old, the Monegasque driver from Monaco, has only competed in 42 Grand Prix, 2 seasons worth of F1. You can see his career so far, drove for Alfa Romeo Sauber in 2018. Last year got the big call up to Ferrari in only his 2nd year of Formula 1. And as you can see from his more detailed statistics, the move, whilst a few people were slightly concerned at the end of 2018 with Charles moving up to Ferrari, he paid them back very respectively. 7 pole positions, the most of any driver last season. 2 race victories, 1 in Belgium and 1 in Monza, the home of Ferrari. An incredible weekend. Finished in front of Sebastian Vettel, 4th at the end of the year, but wasn't able to beat the Red Bull of Max Verstappen and the 2 Mercedes. And while we're on that topic, we might as well talk about Red Bull. I quickly mentioned Max Verstappen there, and yes, he drives for Red Bull Racing Honda. His teammate Alex Albon goes into his 2nd year of Formula 1, and the team need a bit of a boost this season. It's become a little bit stale, finishing 3rd in the Constructors for the last 3 seasons, after what was a strong start to the decade, of course, winning 4 World Championships in a row. They haven't won any since 2013, although in winter testing, if you want to catch up with that, I've done a separate video a few days ago, so if you want to find out what's going on in the world of 2020, you can do. Their car's looking good, it's looking strong, and I'm hopeful they're going to bring a bit more of a fight than they have the last few seasons. In their short history of Formula 1, 62 race victories, 62 pole positions, and 170 podiums. Their star driver, you've probably heard of him, Max Verstappen, only 22 years old. The Dutch driver has competed in 102 races in Formula 1. Just bear that in mind, 22 and 102 races in Formula 1. Insane. And in these 102 races, he's driven for 2 teams. He started with Toro Rosso back in 2015. 2016 was also driving for Toro Rosso, but after Red Bull driver Danny Kvyat made a couple of mistakes, Verstappen, despite only being 18 years old, got the call up to move to Red Bull. And what happened in his first race at the Spanish Grand Prix? He only went and won it. Youngest driver ever to win a Formula 1 Grand Prix, and is an outside shot for the title in 2020. Last season, he finished 3rd, 2 pole positions, his only 2 pole positions in Formula 1 history, but won 3 races. That takes his total up to 8. 2 pole positions, as I mentioned, are his only in Formula 1 history. In his 102 races, 31 podiums. But as I mentioned, the Flying Dutchman, as is so called in Formula 1, his nickname, I've got a good feeling about him for 2020. His teammate Alex Albon, his first year last season, his rookie season in Formula 1, and it's fair to say it was quite eventful. After Red Bull driver Pierre Gasly was struggling in the first half of the season, Alex Albon was moved up to Red Bull halfway through the year. So he started last season at Toro Rosso, ended it with Red Bull. No podiums so far, but considering the fact it was his first year of Formula 1, it was very impressive indeed. The Thai driver, his career, not really a lot to say because it's only been one season, but last year finished 8th overall in the standings. 92 points, was so close to finishing 6th, but Carlos Sainz and Pierre Gasly just beat him out at the final weekend. His best result was a 4th place finish in Japan, but I think it is very likely we'll see not only his first podium in 2020, but perhaps his first ever race victory. I feel we've not seen enough just yet to warrant huge statements like that, but he's definitely a driver that I think a lot of Formula 1 fans really like, a really humble guy, and I feel most of the community would really like to see him do well this season, but still a bit of an unknown in Formula 1 terms. The next team, McLaren, a hugely historical name in Formula 1, have struggled of late. 2019 finished 4th overall in the standings, but a big jump up from 2018, and 2017 finished 9th out of 10 teams, a team really on the up. Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris came into the team last season and are retained for this season, but as you can see, the team's history is a bit insane. 182 victories, 155 pole positions, and 486 podiums throughout their time in Formula 1. Their star man from last season was the Chile master himself, Carlos Sainz. Only 25 years old, started with Max Verstappen in Toro Rosso in 2015. So just like Max has competed in 102 Formula 1 Grand Prix. After 2017, after driving for 3 seasons for Toro Rosso, moved to Renault on a loan basis, but then at the end of that season, moved to McLaren last year, where, as you can see, he finished 6th overall in the standings, a huge achievement for the team, and not only that, scored the team's first podium since 2014 in the Brazilian Grand Prix at the end of the season, scoring 96 points in total. I've just noticed there's a slight issue on the graphics there at the bottom, but 96 points, 1 podium. I'm not too sure how that number 7 has sneaked its way in there. But out of 102 races, like you can see, 1 podium to his name so far. But if the team continues its improvements from the last few years, I don't see why that couldn't be more in 2020. His teammate from last year, the British rookie Lando Norris, really impressed in his first season in Formula 1. He's our youngest driver on the grid in 2020, only 20 years old. And as you can see, there's not many statistics because he's only been in Formula 1 for 1 season. Last year, he finished 11th, scoring 49 points, and his best result of the season came in the second race in Bahrain, a 6th place. But was one of those drivers last year that was mightily unlucky. Would have finished 5th in Belgium, but on the final lap, his car broke down. I'm expecting him to do much better this season. And if he has even just a slight bit more luck, I expect him to be much higher than 11th in the standings. Our next team on our list is Renault Sport. Now, Renault are one of 4 teams in Formula 1 that produce their own engines: Mercedes, Ferrari, Renault and Honda. The car is usually yellow, but what we've seen so far is only this black car, so apologies if when we show up to Melbourne on Sunday it's a yellow car. It's most likely going to be yellow, at least it stands out. Their driver pairing, Daniel Ricciardo for his 2nd season at the team, and Esteban Ocon joins the team after a year out of the sport. And as you can see, it's been a steady growth for the team. 6th in 2017, 4th in 2018, went back slightly last season, but over their history they have got 2 Constructors and Drivers World Championships, 2005 and 6, with Fernando Alonso claiming both titles. Ricciardo, their star man, 30 years old, the Australian, king of the late breakers, king of the overtake, the Honey Badger. His just names, his nicknames are just never ending. Mr. Smiles, 2011, made his Formula 1 debut with HRT. What an awful team. They got the move to Toro Rosso in 12 and 13, then Red Bull in 2014 to 2018, and last year made the big gamble to move to Renault. Finished 9th overall in the standings with a best result of 4th at the Italian Grand Prix, but whilst Ricciardo was with Red Bull, scored 3 pole positions, 2 of which at Monaco, 7 race victories, 29 podiums, a force to be reckoned with in that midfield. Their other driver, Ocon, has been out of a seat since the end of 2018. He also drove for Manor in 2016, only 23 years old, and yet has competed in 50 Grand Prix. No podiums so far for Esteban. He'll want to make a change to that record this season. He's the driver, the most experienced driver on our 2020 grid, who has not scored a podium, interestingly enough. And in his last season of Formula 1, 2018, finished 12th overall with 49 points. AlphaTauri, kind of the new kids on the block this season, but not really. You can see 2017, 18 and 19... I've put their statistics up, but they were under a different name, so it's been a rebrand for 2020. This team were formerly known as Toro Rosso, but you don't really need to know that if you're a new team. The commentators may occasionally get the team name wrong, but their new name, AlphaTauri. The team, whilst known at Toro Rosso, won a race all the way back in 2008. They also scored a pole position at that same weekend, the Italian Grand Prix, where Sebastian Vettel scored his first ever pole position and victory. And last season, the team got 2 pole positions with their 2 drivers, Pierre Gasly and Danny Kvyat, who are retained with the team for 2020. Gasly started last year with Red Bull, and as you can see at the bottom of his screen, despite the fact only racing since 2017, it's been a little bit all over the place for young Pierre. The Frenchman has competed in 47 Grand Prix, but has moved teams twice already, so it's been a little bit of a mess. But last year wasn't performing at his best at the beginning of the season, so was moved back to Toro Rosso, where he scored his first Formula 1 podium in Brazil. It's all a little bit carnage, but now the team has rebranded to AlphaTauri in 2020. And as you can see on screen, that podium in Brazil is his only to date. Finished 7th overall in the standings last year with 95 points. Teammate Danny Kvyat, only 1 year older, 25, the Russian, has had a slightly longer Formula 1 career, but just as bonkers with the amount of switches. Started in 2014, moved to Red Bull, moved back to Toro Rosso after a few slightly dodgy races, but it wasn't that bad. That was a big controversy at the time. Was then dropped from Toro Rosso in 2017, returned in 2019, and now has been retained for 2020 at AlphaTauri. Danny's career, slightly longer, 95 races, has amassed 3 podiums in that time, 2 for Red Bull Racing and 1 last season with Toro Rosso in Germany. Finished 13th overall, 37 points, and of course that 1 podium I just mentioned. Racing Point, a team that looked like they're in a mightily strong position for 2020. Finished 4th in 2017, and many people expect them to do the same this season. But the team retains its same driver lineup as last year, Sergio Perez and Lance Stroll. Sergio, the Mexican 30-year-old, 179 Grand Prix, definitely the team leader. 2011 and 2012 raced for Sauber and came so close to his first ever race victory twice. Once in Malaysia against Fernando Alonso, and then a second time a little bit later on in the season in Italy. However, got a big move to McLaren, didn't work out, and has ever since raced for Force India, which evolved into Racing Point halfway through the 2018 season. 8 podiums throughout his time in Formula 1. Not too bad, but is still missing that first race victory. Last season finished 10th overall, 52 points, and his best result was 6th place. So no podiums last year, but ultimately thanks to his consistency, something he's so good at, finished ahead of the likes of Kvyat, of Norris, despite the fact Kvyat scored a podium in Brazil. I expect this man to really surprise a few people in 2020. His teammate, a more controversial figure in the world of Formula 1, Lance Stroll, son of Lawrence Stroll, who owns the Racing Point team. 21 years old, one of the youngest drivers, and yet has competed in now 4 seasons of Formula 1, which is pretty crazy, 62 races. Started his career in 2017 with Williams. Last year, got the call up to Racing Point after his father took over the team. And as you can see, throughout his time in Formula 1, 1 podium, no pole positions or race wins just yet. I'll leave that there. 15th finished overall last season with 21 points and a 4th place at that hectic German Grand Prix. 3 teams to go, starting with Alfa Romeo, who use Ferrari engines. Their drivers are the huge fan favourite Kimi Raikkonen and Antonio Giovinazzi, who goes into his 2nd full year of Formula 1. 2019, Kimi Raikkonen came into the team, but over the team's history, 10 victories, 12 pole positions, 26 podiums, and scored the first 2 drivers' titles ever, all the way back in 1950 and 1951 with Manuel Fangio and also Giuseppe Farina. A long time ago, way before most of us were born, but just thought I'd include that little statistic in there for you. Kimi Raikkonen, by far the most experienced driver on the grid, 40 years old, double the age of Lando Norris. I'm sure Kimi doesn't care that much because his statistics really speak for themselves. 315 Grand Prix this season, potentially, depends on how many races are cancelled and moved around and whatever, but potentially could claim the most ever races of all time. And as you can see, I almost didn't squidge in his career so far. He's been around since 2001. He's done his shift as old Kimi Raikkonen. Went for a break at the end of 2009, so you might see there between Ferrari and Lotus there's 2 seasons where he's just not there. And yes, he just went on a break, came back in 2012, went back to Ferrari in 2014, and last season moved to Alfa Romeo on a 2-year deal. So potentially this could be Kimi's last ever season in Formula 1, which I think would be a big shame to most fans. Through his 300 races, or 315 races, 103 podiums, 18 pole positions, 21 race victories, and yes, is one of 3 world champions on the grid this year, all the way back in 2007, Ferrari's last Drivers' World Champion. Last year, sadly for Kimi, wasn't quite near the front of the field. 12th overall in the standings, 43 points, and a best result of P4 in Brazil. His teammate Giovinazzi in his 2nd full season of Formula 1 last year, though he did do 2 races at the beginning of 2017 for Sauber. He is the only Italian driver on the grid. And despite the fact he has only competed in 23 races, is slightly older than most of the grid, 26 years old. And last year, his first full year, wasn't amazing and will definitely be looking to improve on what was a solid end to last season. 17th overall in the standings, 14 points, but a best result of 5th at the end of the season in Brazil proves that there's definitely room for improvement and the potential is still there for Giovinazzi. HAAS F1, a team powered by Ferrari, are definitely fiery. Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean, it's been an up and down time for the American team. 8th in 2017, 5th in 2018, could have even been 4th if things had gone their way, but 9th last season. There's room for improvement, to say the least. Kevin Magnussen, the Danish driver, has been in Formula 1 since 2014, where he raced for McLaren, was then dropped in 2015, however did 1 race for the team in 2015, so I've kind of included it there on his career so far. Moved to Renault in 2016, and then to HAAS in 2017, where he has spent the rest of his career so far. 103 Grand Prix, and last year, it wasn't his best, but he still beat teammate Romain Grosjean. The car wasn't great, and definitely both drivers will be looking to make a point in 2020. A best result of 6th in the first race of the season for K-Mag, but apart from that, the team really struggled to score points. 20 overall for Kevin, 16th in the standings. 1 podium in his Formula 1 career, which funnily enough came at his first ever race all the way back in 2014 with McLaren, but has never scored a podium since. So technically, despite the fact Ocon has gone the most races without a podium, Kevin is on the longest streak without a podium. So I just thought I'd include that statistic there for you. His teammate Romain Grosjean, 33 years old, the 3rd oldest driver in Formula 1 behind Raikkonen and Hamilton, will hope to put his experience to good use. He's a driver who can sometimes find himself crashing more often than others, but definitely last season was better than 2018. His career so far started back in 2009 with Renault. Lotus 2012 to 2015 was his prime time. His real get-going time. Scored 10 podiums in that time, his last at the Belgian Grand Prix in 2015. And then Haas brought him on board for their first ever season in Formula 1 in 2016. And for 2 solid years was that team's star driver comfortably. 2018 crashed more than he should have. 2019 was a little bit lackluster and is a driver that is going to be under pressure to keep his seat for 2021. 18th overall last season, only 8 points. His best result, a 7th place finish. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. And I feel he's going to prove a lot of people wrong. But that's just me. We'll move on to our final team before I get myself in any more trouble. Williams. Retaining George Russell for 2020 and housing our only rookie of 2020, Nicholas Latifi. 2017 wasn't too bad. 5th overall in the standings, but the last 2 seasons, dead last, 10th for Williams. And as you can see, their history, well, it's a bit good considering where they are now. 114 victories, 128 pole positions, and 312 podiums. Blimey. Their star driver, George Russell, 22 years old. It was his first year of Formula 1 last season with Williams. But as you can see on his statistics, it doesn't look great. He's never scored a point in Formula 1. Finished dead last season. His best result of 11th in Germany. But a special talent, a special driver. And the team appear to have produced a much better car this season, so expect Russell to be picking up his first points at some point in 2020. And we will finish today's video with our final rookie, Nicholas Latifi. The 24-year-old Canadian finished 2nd runner-up last year in Formula 2 and will make his debut in Melbourne next weekend. So his statistics are blank. But last year in Formula 2, finished runner-up to Formula E Mercedes driver Nick de Vries. No pole positions in that time last season, but was able to secure 4 victories to give himself a 2nd place overall. Blimey. We've got there in the end. 30 minutes. That's less than 2 minutes on each driver. Hopefully that wasn't too long for you. If it was, I apologise. If you've got any questions, throw them down in the comments below. I know Formula 1 can be very daunting for some people. It's a big world, but I try my best to make it as easy as possible for you. So again, if you do have any questions, even if you're watching this halfway through the season, throw them in the comments below and I will do my very best to answer them. Thank you for watching if you've made it this far. If you want to stick with Formula 1 for 2020, feel free to subscribe. Thank you all for watching and I hope to see you in the next one.